Hello everyone and welcome back to My Opinion. And after yesterday's 8 over contest, it's 1-1 going to the final game of the series. And with India winning yesterday's game by 6 wickets and Australia winning the first game by 4 wickets. Now, what I'll be doing in this video is I'll be reviewing yesterday's game as well as giving my views on the positives and unanswered questions from both sides after the first 2 games of this series. So on yesterday's game, India won a must-win encounter yesterday by 6 wickets, keeping the series alive going to the final game. And both sides made 2 changes each. So Australia brought in, I think, Sean Abbott and Daniel Sams in place of Josh Inglis and Nathan Ellis. And for India, Jasprit Bumrah and Rishabh Pant were in place of Bhuvneshwar Kumar and Umesh Yadav. And India won the toss and chose to bowl first. Now, on the dynamic of 8 over games, I think that since many of the international players don't play in a competition such as the T10, where you have to adapt to that particular format over a stretch of games, I think that most players wouldn't have played or really wouldn't be playing an 8 over game, a 10 over game, or even a 15 over game, unless the game is interrupted due to rain and so the innings has to be shortened. Now, I think either one of 2 things would be the case. So one, some players would have played 8 over games sporadically throughout their careers due to rain interruptions, but I think because of the sporadic nature of when these games have been played, they wouldn't have been able to develop a refined approach as to how to go about these games when they do play them. And on the other hand, some players may not have been involved in a contest like this at all. So I think it would have been outside the comfort zone of pretty much every player that took the field in yesterday's game. I think the reason why you don't see 10 over games being played on the international level, or even the fact that you see formats like the T10 or the 100 being scoffed at as of now, is because there's a perception that since the number of overs is below 20, there's a perception that the quality will be decreased compared to a T20 game because of the scrappier nature of the game. Now, in the UK recently, there's been the high performance review of English cricket, where they've come up with the idea of having a 6-team county championship at the very top. Now, this has been met with a bit of displeasure, and I think I don't understand why the development of Test cricket is being linked with the development of the 100. I think that one format does not affect the other, but unfortunately that's the rhetoric that's kind of being put around. And because many people are displeased with the amendment of the 6-team county championship, there's kind of a thing where they're saying if there wasn't focus or as much focus on the 100, would there be more focus on red ball cricket, which I don't think is the right way to go about it, but that's kind of the rhetoric that's been pushed around. And as I said, the reason why this is the case is because of the perception that a 10 over game or a 100 ball game would be more scrappier than a T20 game and would therefore result in less quality. Now, in my view, I actually think T10 games can increase the ceiling for both batsmen and bowlers in a T20 game. I think for the batsman, you'll be in a high adrenaline situation from ball 1. You'd have to kind of go at a high strike rate, get a lot of boundaries from ball 1. And at first, it'll be a bit frantic. You may spend a kind of few innings trying and failing, but after a while, I think you'll be able to develop a refined approach to batting in a T10 game and going hard at the bowling. And if you improve your the execution in this format of the game, I think if you need to let's say go at 13 or 14 and over in a T20 game, it won't be such a stretch. And I think since IPL 2020, there has been an increased belief when if you need 70 or 80 of the last 5 overs even, it's not a completely impossible task. But I think batsmen succeeding in the T10 format will make that kind of known even more. And you'll see a lot more cases where if you need 80 or 5 overs, then the batting side would get the job done a lot more than they are doing so now. And for the bowlers, once again, a high adrenaline situation bowling in the T10 game. And the 12 balls you bowl, you'll be under the pump every ball. And executing deliveries such as Yorkers is a very difficult skill, and if you miss by a bit, you will go for runs. But I think if you are able to hold your nerve in a T10 game where you're under pressure for every ball that you bowl, I think you'll be able to also do so in a T20 game. And I think the more the players play the T10, I think it will refine, or rather increase the ceiling in the batting and bowling, and will result in much more high quality, more competitive T20 games. And on the game yesterday where Australia batted first, I think when you're batting first in an 8-over game, one of two things can happen. So usually when you're batting first in a white ball game, you have the I think it's much easier to bat a team out of the game when you're batting first than when you're batting second. I think that that because of the chasing pressure in the second innings. And I think that there was a game in IPL 2013 between CSK and RCB, an 8-over game, and Virat Kohli scored, I think, 56 not out in that game to let RCB get to 108 in 8 overs. And CSK fell well short of that. And that was a case where if you get above 100 in an 8-over game, psychologically, the side that's batting first is much more likely to get the job done than the side chasing, and that has kind of been the case. There's another thing where when you're batting first in an 8-over game, you are shooting in the dark. And if you don't hit that strike, if you're not in that position to bat the team out of the game, I think that you will find that you don't exactly, you want to get to 100 or above, but in the roadmap of getting there, you may lose wickets, for example, and in the end, you may not get to that stage. And the reason why I'm saying this is because Glenn Maxwell and Tim David would have been given the license to really go hard in this game. But I think since they would have been shooting in the dark, they would not have played too many of these games before. And maybe Glenn Maxwell may have played some 8-over games sporadically, as I said before. But I don't know if Tim David has played these kind of games before, despite the fact that these two are big-hitting players. And I think that you even saw by the way that they got out, I thought that they didn't really, it was very frantic even for the few deliveries that they did stay at the crease, with the way they both were dismissed, missing effectively a straight one from Axar Patel. It was a case where I think that kind of a thing will improve the more you play these kind of games, but unfortunately you could tell that they were a bit out of their comfort zone, you could say, and I do understand, and that's why since also they were batting first, they would have wanted to get as much as they can, and I think on this occasion, I think both of those two just kind of lost their heads. And Matthew Wade was brilliant once again, I thought, 43 off 20, continuing from what he did in the previous game. And Aaron Finch at the start, despite the fact that wickets were falling, had he not given the start for Australia, then it would have been much harder for them to even get to the score that they did, despite the fact that Matthew Wade played very well. So 90 for 5 in 8 overs, and I think that India would have been quite happy with what they were going to chase in the second innings. And in India's case, the moment the first over went for 20 runs, you kind of thought it made things more regulation. Still 10 and over isn't the easiest to get, but based on the conditions or the format that was played yesterday, I don't really think he would have minded going trying to get 70 off 7 overs, and they did so fairly easily in the end, even with there being 2 wickets and 2 balls. I think Virat Kohli and Suryakumar Yadav were dismissed on 2 consecutive deliveries from Adam Zampa, who was really the only leading light for Australia's bowlers in this game. 3 for 16 and 2 overs is outstanding. But in the end, even though those wickets did fall, 36 off 20, I think it was, even after those wickets fell, and in the end, India won the game quite easily. Now, I thought Australia could have made more of a game out of it, and I don't understand the captaincy at the end from a usually quite a good captain. I thought that Hazelwood would have bowled the penultimate over and Pat Cummins would have bowled the last over. Instead, Pat Cummins bowled the over before. Now, I thought he would have given 15 runs in that over. He gave 13 runs and took 1 wicket. And I did not understand Daniel Sams bowling the last over. Even Dinesh Karthik at the end said that he thought Hazelwood would bowl the last over. Now, you've seen another time Dinesh Karthik walks across his stumps and accesses the leg side. He either accesses, you could say, square leg a lot of the time, but he could also access mid wicket as well. And Daniel Sams made it even easier, even more predictable, where he bowled slow deliveries from around the wicket, and Dinesh Karthik did what he likes to do, moved across the leg side and hit him for 6 over square leg, and then hit him for 4 through mid wicket. So I don't understand the captaincy at all, and I thought it was very predictable bowling as well. But yeah, Australia could have made it harder for India to win that game if they had kind of got those 2 overs more right than they did, but it is what it is. And so 1-1 going into the final game of the series. And on what I said at the start of the video, where I said I'll be talking about the positives and unanswered questions for both sides. I think for Australia, even though they lost this game, I don't think they'd feel too bad about it at all. I mean, they won the first game when they did 54 of 24 balls due to an exceptional performance from Matthew Wade and also Cameron Green at the start. And also, I think they could have made a better kind of a fight of this game than the last 2 overs. So I think since both sides wouldn't have really been used to playing an 8 over contest, I think Australia, both sides did give a decent enough fight in this game. So I don't think Australia would feel too bad about this loss at all. And on India's perspective, I'll first start off with India, then I'll get to Australia. So on India's perspective, both KL Rahul and Rohit Sharma have got good scores now in at least one of the 2 games. Rahul hitting a half century in the first game, and Rohit Sharma really carrying this innings, you could say, with 46 of 20 in this game. Suryakumar Yadav in the first game was excellent, but I think we've seen that he does have the tendency to be quite careless, and this delivery in yesterday's game was too full to sweep, but he played the sweep shot anyway. And I think when he gets out for these low scores, and even in the Asia Cup, apart from the Hong Kong game, he didn't really make use of his good form, I thought, in the other innings. And it's frustrating because he is probably the best white ball batsman in the world right now, with how effortless he goes about things. I just feel like if he kind of reduced that tendency to be careless, we'll see a lot more kind of great innings from Suryakumar Yadav. I think at times you've seen it in the recent past as well, and in yesterday's game as well. He is at times a bit too careless, I feel. So he gets out in ways that he wouldn't really want to see in the replay. And yeah, I think if he just improves on that fact and makes use of the brilliant form that he has now, I think there is no one better in white ball cricket as a batsman as of now. Hardik Pandya in the previous game was excellent. He didn't really bat for too long in this game, but in the end, India got the job done. And Dinesh Karthik, he's played 2 balls in this game and he was absolutely outstanding. So I think that, on the batting front, I don't think India would feel too bad at all. Akshar Patel in both games has been outstanding. 3 for 14, I think 3 for 17 or so, when Cameron Green was hitting everyone around. And I think if it wasn't for him, India would not have started to come back into the game, I feel. I mean, even when all the bowlers are going for runs and he takes 3 for 17 in his 4, I've had great faith in his bowling for a long while now. I've even said, look, I don't have a problem with Jadeja, but I'm saying that if you're batting at number 7 and DK is going to play in the team at 6, then I've said before many times, Jadeja is not a 4 over bank yet with the ball in all conditions. And I think that... I don't think that he would have stood up with the ball as well as Akshar Patel did in the first game. I think in this game, the 2 wickets he did get, 2 for 13 in an 8 over game is gold. But I think the 2 wickets that he did get, we had to put into context that it was when the batsmen were kind of not in their comfort zone. He bowled a delivery straight at the stumps and they just swung and missed. So I think, 2 for 13 is very good in this game, but I think that the 3 for 17 was even better in my view. So I think on a bowling front, in my view, I would play him at number 7 in the T20 World Cup. Jasprit Bumrah was back today, bowled a very good Yorker to Aaron Finch to dismiss him. I still thought he could have played it slightly better, but it still was an irregular delivery to deal with it with the angle. And that's on him. Now, there are 2 bowlers who I think would be looking to improve their performances, I think. Now, Yuzvendra Chahal, in the last while now in the Asia Cup, and I think in the game against Australia in the first game, hasn't quite been at his best. The batsmen have hit him around a bit. In the Asia Cup, I thought at times, for example, against Pakistan, he did get on kind of good bowling patches for an over or so, but unfortunately didn't really have a great tournament. And against Australia, he hasn't really had the greatest start so far. Now, I'm sure he will bounce back, but I think India will have to manage that a bit. I think he's the only wrist spinner on the side, I think. So they would want him to really come good in the T20 World Cup, and which he hasn't done so far in the last few games. And I think even if he doesn't do that well, I don't really think that going in with Ashwin instead of Chahal would be really an upgrade really in that situation, the T20 World Cup. I think going in without a wrist spinner in your side would be a bit ill-advised, and it wouldn't help, of course, if Chahal isn't bowling well by that point in time. So I think in the next few games it will be really important for him that he gets some decent performances in the next few games. And Harshal Patel, I think in the last few games, the last two games now against Matthew Wade, I've had no idea what, especially one type of delivery that he's bowled, kind of he's planned to do with it. I think there have been times where he's gone around the wicket and to the left-hander and bowled very short, angling into the leg side, and I don't understand that delivery at all, because it's easy pickings for anyone, especially a left-hander, to kind of hit those boundaries. And I think when he's in, it depends. I mean, it will either be him or Bhuvneshwar Kumar starting in the T20 World Cup. And I think if there is swing, you could easily bowl Bhuvneshwar Kumar for 4 up front, and the likes of Arshdeep Singh and Jasprit Bumrah could bowl at the end. But if there isn't swing and they go with Harshal Patel, I think it's the case where he has to mix, and he can do this. He can mix it up with slow deliveries if directed properly, and quicker deliveries, which I think he can do. But I think that the option that he chose against Matthew Wade in both games, I don't understand, and he'll be looking to bounce back in the next game, and if he does play in the South Africa series. And yeah, that's on those two. And on Virat Kohli, look, I've said what I need to say before, and I think 11 off 6 when he would have been outside his comfort zone, not only because of the form, but also because of the fact that I think if your game is not in order, it would have been quite tough for him to really get a substantial contribution in this game. But 11 off 6 when you're outside your comfort zone, I don't really think is such a bad thing. So that's on him, and let's see what he does in the next game and in the South Africa series. Now on Australia, I think that there is what I don't have a problem with pretty much any of the squad apart from one faculty, which I actually think if they include this one player in the squad, which they haven't done, and I'm really surprised they haven't done, but it would make their side a lot more better. Now, they're missing, I think, 4 key players for this series, and even then the fact that they're 1-1, I think they should be really happy with that. The likes of Mitchell Starc coming to the side will surely improve this side. But I think it's a case where now, in my view, if you've got David Warner, Aaron Finch, Mitchell Marsh, then I think Glenn Maxwell, Marcus Stoinis, Tim David, Matthew Wade. That's a very good top 7. Then Mitchell Starc at number 8. Now, then I think Hazelwood and Adam Zampa can bat at number 9. Now, there's one spot which I think they are wasting so far, and I think they've picked Pat Cummins and Kane Richardson for, I think, in the squad for the T20 World Cup. And for some reason, I have no idea why they've overlooked one name who had quite a good IPO, I thought, when he did bowl. And he's a really good prospect. Riley Meredith was over 150 kph and can bowl at the death. I have no idea why he hasn't played at all. Instead, they've picked Pat Cummins, who's gone for runs pretty much every time he's bowled in the last few games in this format. And Kane Richardson, who didn't have a great time against Sri Lanka. I think if Josh Hazelwood and Mitchell Starc take the new ball, then I don't know what Pat Cummins' role would be apart from being an enforcer. Now, in most cases, I don't really think he'll be too effective against the better opposition, you could say. And that's why I think that soon, it's almost like if you're playing him for his batting towards the end, but if he gives 50 runs, if he scores on a 40 or 50 runs, but then gives that, there is no point. I mean, he's in the side to bowl, and that's why, in my view, if they played Vali Meredith in the side, there would be all three bowlers could bowl to death, and you've also got Hazelwood and Mitchell Starc to take the new ball, and along with Adam Zampa, Glenn Maxwell as well, Marcus Stoinis, I think. In my view, there are three sides that are the favourites to hold this T20 World Cup at the end, and that's India, Australia, and South Africa. It helps that India are playing, albeit not a full-strength Australia, but also them and South Africa. And on the other hand, it helps Australia that they're playing against basically a full-strength India, and they're still 1-1 going into the last game. So it'll be a very good game, I think. I hope so anyway in the last game, and yeah, let's see how they go. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and remember, this is my opinion. What's yours?